Marcus Chen stared through the force field of his cell, his dark eyes fixed on the towering blue-skinned aliens guarding him. Just 12 hours ago, he had been doing his routine work as a xenobiologist on the research vessel Terra Pioneer. Now, he was a prisoner on an alien warship, accused of trespassing in sacred space. The cell was uncomfortably cold, making his standard-issue research uniform feel paper-thin. The guards, with their crystalline armor and plasma rifles, hadn't spoken a word since throwing him in here. Their blue skin seemed to shimmer under the harsh white lights, reminding him of Earth's oceans. "Get up, human," one of the guards finally spoke in surprisingly good English. "The High Matriarch wants to see you." Marcus stood slowly, his legs stiff from sitting on the hard floor. Two guards flanked him as they marched through corridors that looked like they were carved from pure sapphire. The ship's architecture was both beautiful and intimidating, with sweeping arches and glowing blue energy lines running through the walls. They entered a massive chamber that made Marcus feel like an ant. At its center sat the most impressive alien he'd ever seen. The High Matriarch of the Azurians towered at least 9 feet tall, her blue skin decorated with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with light. Her eyes, completely silver without pupils, fixed on him with an intensity that made him want to shrink away. "Marcus Chen," her voice echoed through the chamber. "Do you know why you're here?" "My ship was conducting peaceful research," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We had no idea this was sacred space. We're willing to leave immediately and never return." The High Matriarch's laugh was like crystals chiming. "Oh, but leaving is not an option anymore. You see, you've created quite an interesting situation for us." Before Marcus could respond, a side door opened. His jaw dropped as another Azurian entered, younger, but no less striking than the matriarch. Her skin was a lighter shade of blue, almost turquoise, and her silver eyes seemed somehow warmer. She moved with grace that made it look like she was floating across the floor. "This is my daughter, Princess Valora," the matriarch announced. "And she has chosen you." Marcus blinked in confusion. "Chosen me? For what?" "Marriage," Valora spoke, her voice softer than her mother's, but still carrying that same musical quality. "I have studied your species through your broadcasts. You understand something we have lost, something called love." The absurdity of the situation almost made Marcus laugh, but the serious expressions on the aliens' faces stopped him. There must be some mistake. "I'm just a xenobiologist. I'm nobody special." "Special enough," the matriarch declared. "Here is your choice, Marcus Chen. Marry my daughter or face execution for trespassing in our most sacred space. You have 1 Earth hour to decide." Valora stepped closer to him, her height making him feel small, even though she wasn't as tall as her mother. "I have watched your species," she said. "You feel things we cannot. Your emotions make you stronger, not weaker as our scientists claim. I need to understand this." Marcus's mind raced. He was being offered a choice between death and marriage to an alien princess who seemed fascinated by human emotions. As a scientist, the rational part of his brain was screaming that this was an incredible opportunity to study their species. As a human being, he was terrified. "Why me?" he managed to ask. Valora's head tilted slightly. "Because when I watched the recordings from your research vessel, you were the only one who looked at the stars with wonder in your eyes. The others just saw data. You saw beauty. I want to understand that difference." The guards led Marcus back to his cell, leaving him with just under an hour to make a decision that would change not only his life, but potentially the relationship between two species forever. His choice was simple: marriage or death. But as he sat in his cell, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to this situation than anyone was telling him. Marcus sat in his new quarters aboard the Azurian ship, staring at the strange blue lights dancing across the walls. After choosing marriage over death, the aliens had moved him from his cell to this luxurious room. It was beautiful, but felt more like a fancy prison than a home. A soft chime at his door made him jump. Princess Valora entered, her light blue skin almost glowing in the dim light. She was wearing what looked like liquid crystal formed into a flowing dress. "I hope your quarters are comfortable," she said, keeping her distance. "I know this situation is difficult for you." Marcus ran a hand through his dark hair. "That's putting it mildly. Yesterday I was studying alien life forms. Today I'm engaged to one." Valora's silver eyes studied him with curiosity. "You are afraid," she stated simply. "Wouldn't you be? I'm trapped on an alien ship, forced to marry someone I just met, and I'm pretty sure some of your people want me dead." Marcus pointed to his breakfast, which had arrived earlier. "Someone already tried to poison my food. The guard caught it in time." Valora's face showed the first real emotion he'd seen from her: anger. "The traditionalists," she said, her voice tight. "They believe mixing our species is wrong. I will find who did this." She moved closer, sitting across from him. "But you are correct. There are those who want you dead. That is why I must teach you our ways quickly. Knowledge will help you survive." For the next hour, Valora explained Azurian politics. Their society was ruled by women, with men kept separate in special facilities. Emotions were seen as primitive and dangerous. The genetic council controlled everything, deciding who could marry and have children based on genetic perfection. "But something is wrong with our people," Valora said, lowering her voice. "Each generation, fewer children are born. The council says it is because we need even more genetic control, but I think they are lying." Marcus leaned forward, his scientist's mind engaged. "And that's why you chose me, to study human emotions." "Partly," Valora admitted, "but also because you were kind. When your ship found one of our damaged probes, you restored and returned it instead of keeping it to study. That is not what most species would do." Their conversation was interrupted by another chime. A tall Azurian woman entered, her face stern. "Princess, the Genetic Council requests your presence." "Alone?" Valora stood gracefully. "Counselor Lin, my future husband has the right to attend all meetings regarding our union." "This primitive." Lin's voice dripped with disgust. "He will corrupt our bloodline with his emotional weakness." Marcus watched Valora's reaction carefully. Her face remained calm, but he noticed her hands tighten slightly. "This primitive is a respected scientist who shows more wisdom than many on the council," Valora said coolly. "He stays with me." As they walked to the council chamber, Marcus whispered, "Thank you for defending me." "We must protect each other now," Valora replied quietly. "The council fears what they cannot control. And you, Marcus Chen, with your human emotions and unpredictable ways, are something they cannot control." Entering the council chamber, Marcus saw 12 stern-faced Azurian women seated in a semicircle, their silver eyes all fixed on him with varying degrees of hostility. Only then did he truly understand what Valora meant. This wasn't just about marriage anymore. He had become a piece in a larger game, one that could change Azurian society forever. And from the looks he was getting, not everyone wanted that change to happen. Valora's hand brushed against his briefly, a small gesture of support that would have shocked most Azurians with its emotional content. Marcus realized that perhaps he wasn't the only one learning to trust someone very different from himself. The music room in Valora's private quarters was filled with strange alien instruments, all of them collecting dust. Marcus stood in the center, holding his personal tablet that he'd been allowed to keep. "This is what we call music on Earth," he said, playing a classical piano piece. Valora's silver eyes widened as the melody filled the room. "It creates sensations I do not understand," she said, touching her chest, "like energy flowing through my body." Marcus smiled. "Those are emotions. This piece is meant to make you feel peaceful and a little sad. Music helps humans express feelings that are hard to put into words." "The council says emotions make us weak," Valora said, moving closer to listen. "But when I hear this, I feel stronger, more alive." Their quiet moment was interrupted by alarms blaring through the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and guards rushed past the door. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, but Valora was already moving to a control panel on the wall. "There's been an incident in the mail facility," she said, her voice tense. "We must go there immediately." As they hurried through the ship's corridors, Valora explained that male Azurians were kept in special buildings, used only for breeding when their genetics matched the Council's requirements. They weren't allowed to have careers, make decisions, or live freely. The male facility was chaos when they arrived. A group of male Azurians had broken into the facility's control room, demanding to be heard. They were taller than the females, their blue skin darker, and their eyes filled with a determination Marcus had never seen in Azurians before. "They're supposed to be emotionless," Valora whispered. "The treatments keep them calm and obedient. But look at them." The leader of the male group spotted them. "Princess Valora, we know about your human mate. Is it true their males live freely? Is it true they feel emotions?" Guards were approaching with weapons, but Valora held up her hand to stop them. She stepped forward, her voice firm. "Yes, it is true. In human society, all people are free to feel and live as they choose." "Then why are we denied this right?" the leader asked. "We've discovered the truth. The treatments don't just suppress emotions, they're killing us. Each generation, fewer of us survive the procedures." Marcus watched Valora's face as she processed this information. He could see her struggling with everything she'd been taught versus what was right in front of her. "Show me your evidence," she said finally. The male Azurians had kept secret records. Years of data showed that their population was declining rapidly. The emotional suppression treatments were damaging their ability to reproduce, but the Council kept demanding stronger treatments to maintain control. "This is genocide," Marcus said, looking at the numbers. "They're slowly killing their own people in the name of genetic perfection." Valora turned to the guards. "Stand down. No one will be punished for this protest." Then to the male leader, "I give you my word as princess. This will change, but we must be careful. The Council has eyes everywhere." As they left the facility, Marcus noticed Valora was shaking slightly. He'd never seen her show such strong emotion. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "No," she replied. "Everything I believed about our society. It was all built on lies. How many have died because we feared our own emotions?" Marcus took a risk and gently touched her hand. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. "Change isn't easy," he said, "but sometimes it's necessary for survival. Maybe that's why you chose a human mate. Deep down, you knew your people needed to learn to feel again." Valora looked at their joined hands, then at him. "The Council will see this as treason. They will try to stop us. Then we'll have to be stronger than them," Marcus said. "And from what I've seen today, you're already stronger than you know." Marcus couldn't sleep. The events at the male facility kept playing in his mind. He sat at the desk in his quarters, reviewing the secret data he'd copied from the male Azurians when someone knocked urgently at his door. It was Valora, looking more distressed than he'd ever seen her. "We need to go. Now." "What's wrong?" Marcus asked, but she was already pulling him into the corridor. "My mother's private laboratory," she whispered as they hurried through the dimly lit hallways. "I found something. Something that changes everything." They used Valora's royal access codes to enter a section of the ship Marcus had never seen before. The laboratory was massive, filled with glowing tubes containing what looked like growing Azurian embryos. "These are the failed attempts," Valora explained, her voice shaking. "For the past 50 years, our species has been failing to reproduce naturally. The Council blamed emotions, said we needed more control, more genetic manipulation. But look." She activated a computer terminal, showing him research data. Marcus's scientific training helped him understand the horrible truth. "Your people aren't failing to reproduce because of emotions," he said, reading the complex genetic charts. "It's the opposite. The genetic manipulation to remove emotions is causing the problem. Your species needs emotional connections to reproduce successfully. Yes, Valora touched one of the tubes gently. Each generation, we become more perfect according to the Council's standards, and each generation, more of our children die before they're born. My mother has been trying to find a solution in secret. Suddenly, alarms blared through the laboratory. Valora's eyes widened in fear. They know we're here. They ran for the exit, but it was too late. Counselor Lin stood there with 4 armed guards, their weapons aimed at the couple. I knew you would lead us to the evidence eventually, Lin said coldly. Your fascination with this human made you predictable, Princess. You knew. Valora's voice was filled with anger. You knew we were dying and still continued the treatments. Control is everything, Lin replied. Better a smaller, perfect population than a large, emotionally chaotic one. Your mother understood this, but she became weak, trying to find alternatives. And now you follow her path of weakness. Marcus stepped forward, despite the weapons pointed at him. You're wrong. Emotions aren't weakness. They're strength. Humans advanced because of our emotions, not despite them. We feel fear, so we learn caution. We feel love, so we protect each other. We feel anger, so we fight injustice. Silence, Lin commanded. Guards, take them to separate cells. The Council will decide their fate. But as the guards moved forward, something unexpected happened. More Azurians emerged from the shadows, males from the facility, led by the same leader from the protest. They had followed Marcus and Valora, suspecting they would uncover important information. The princess speaks truth, the male leader announced. We all deserve to live fully, to feel, to love. No more control, no more death. Lin's face showed the first emotion Marcus had ever seen from her. Fear. She was outnumbered. This is treason, she shouted, but her guards were lowering their weapons, affected by the truth they'd just witnessed. Valora stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. No, this is survival. Our people are dying because of your lies. It ends now. As Lin was taken away by her own guards, Marcus looked at Valora with new understanding. You knew we'd find this. That's another reason you chose me, because you needed someone who could understand the science and help expose the truth. Valora's silver eyes met his. I chose you because you showed me that feeling emotions doesn't make us weak. It makes us whole. But now we have an even bigger challenge ahead. What's that? Marcus asked. Teaching my people how to feel again, she replied, and staying alive long enough to do it. The evidence they'd found would shake Azurian society to its core. But as Marcus watched Valora organizing their newfound allies, he realized that change was already beginning, and there was no stopping it now. The news spread through the Azurian ship like wildfire. In just 3 days since the laboratory discovery, everything had changed. Marcus watched from Valora's private meeting room as groups of Azurians gathered in the corridors, talking openly about emotions for the first time in generations. The young ones adapt quickly, Valora said, standing beside him at the window. See how they're already trying to smile. They copy your expressions, but not everyone was happy about the changes. The ship's communication system suddenly activated, making both of them jump. Attention all citizens, a stern voice announced. By order of the Genetic Council, Princess Valora and the human Marcus Chen are hereby charged with treason. Any citizen harboring them will face severe punishment. Valora's face hardened. They're making their move sooner than we expected. The door burst open. The male leader from the facility, who they now knew as Kex, rushed in. Princess, they're coming. The council has ordered your arrest. They're saying the human has infected you with emotional instability. How many support them? Marcus asked, already grabbing the emergency bag they'd prepared. Half the ship's security force, Kex replied. But you have more allies than they know. The younger generation stands with you. And most importantly, he paused. looking nervous. "Your mother has awakened." Valora gasped. The High Matriarch had been in a coma-like state since Marcus arrived, which was why the council had so much power. "She's awake." "When?" "An hour ago. She's asking for you both." They moved quickly through secret passages that Valora had known since childhood. Loyal guards helped them avoid security patrols. Along the way, they saw more signs of change. Azurians holding hands, showing concern for each other, young ones practicing human gestures of affection. "They're like children discovering a new world," Marcus whispered. "We are all children in this," Valora replied. "My people haven't felt true emotions in over 300 years." They reached the High Matriarch's private chambers. Valora's mother was sitting up in bed, looking weak but alert. Her silver eyes focused on them sharply. "Mother," Valora rushed to her side. "The council, they're trying to." "I know everything," the matriarch said. "My coma wasn't natural. The council poisoned me when I discovered the truth about the treatments." She turned to Marcus. "They feared I would do exactly what my daughter has done. Seek help from humans." "Your Majesty," Marcus bowed awkwardly. "We found your research lab." "Good." She sat straighter. "Then you understand why I arranged all of this." Valora stepped back in shock. "You arranged it?" The matriarch smiled. Actually smiled, something Marcus had never seen an elder Azurian do. "Who do you think made sure your ship found our sacred space, Marcus? Who suggested to my daughter that she study human broadcasts? I knew the council was killing our people. I needed an outsider, someone who could help us feel again." Before they could process this revelation, alarms blared. "Council forces are heading this way," Kex reported from the door. The matriarch pressed a crystal into Valora's hand. "This contains all my research and my official orders as High Matriarch. Take it to the ship's broadcast center. Let everyone know the truth. But you'll be here alone." Valora protested. "I am High Matriarch," she said firmly. "They cannot harm me without causing an uprising. Go, save our people." As they ran toward the broadcast center, Marcus saw tears in Valora's eyes. Real tears, something Azurians hadn't been capable of for generations. "Your mother planned everything," he said in amazement. "She did." Valora wiped her eyes, looking at the crystal. "And now we're going to finish what she started. Our people will learn to feel again, no matter what it costs." Behind them, they could hear the sound of running feet. The council's forces were coming, but ahead of them lay hope, not just for their survival, but for the rebirth of an entire civilization. Marcus and Valora raced through the ship's corridors toward the broadcast center, the crystal containing the High Matriarch's research clutched tightly in Valora's hand. Behind them, they could hear the heavy footsteps of council forces getting closer. "There," Kex pointed ahead. "The broadcast center is just around that corner." But as they turned the corner, they found Counselor Lin waiting with 6 armed guards. Their weapons were raised, faces emotionless. "That's far enough," Lin said coldly. "Surrender the crystal, princess, and perhaps we'll let your human pet live." Valora stepped forward, shielding Marcus with her body. "You've lost, Lin. My mother is awake. She knows what you did to her." "The High Matriarch is weak," Lin spat, "just like her daughter who fell in love with a primitive human." For the first time, Valora didn't deny the accusation. Instead, she stood taller. "Yes, I love him. And that love has taught me more about strength than all your genetic manipulations ever could." Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered. A group of young Azurians appeared from side corridors, surrounding Lin's forces. They were led by the guards who had helped them earlier. "Drop your weapons," one young guard ordered. "By order of the High Matriarch." Lin laughed. "You think these emotional children scare me? Fire on them all." But when she turned to her guards, she saw them lowering their weapons. One by one, they stepped away from her. "What are you doing?" Lin demanded. "We saw the research data," one guard said. "We know you're killing our people. We choose life. We choose to feel." Lynn screamed in rage, a sound that shocked everyone, as it was pure emotion from someone who claimed to have none. She pulled out a hidden weapon and aimed it at Marcus. "If I kill the human, this emotional plague dies with him." Valora moved faster than anyone thought possible. She knocked the weapon from Lynn's hand, but not before it fired. The energy bolt grazed Marcus's arm, making him stumble. "Marcus." Valora caught him before he fell. Her silver eyes filled with tears as she checked his wound. "I'm okay," he assured her, touching her face gently. "It's just a scratch." Lynn stared at them in horror. "What have you done to her?" "Azurians don't cry. We don't feel." "You're wrong," a powerful voice echoed through the corridor. Everyone turned to see the High Matriarch approaching, supported by 2 loyal guards. Though she looked weak, her presence commanded attention. "Mother," Valora called out. "You shouldn't be here." "I go where I'm needed," the matriarch said. She faced Lynn. "You speak of strength, but look at yourself. Your fear of emotions has turned to hatred. That's the only feeling you allowed yourself, and it destroyed you." Lynn looked around wildly, seeing she was completely surrounded. With a cry of rage, she rushed at Marcus with a hidden blade. But before she could reach him, multiple stun beams hit her from all directions. She crumpled to the floor, unconscious. "Take her to the detention center," the matriarch ordered. She turned to Marcus and Valora. "The broadcast center awaits. It's time our people learned the truth." As they walked the final distance to the broadcast center, Marcus saw something amazing. All along the corridors, Azurians were gathering. Young and old, male and female, all watching with hope in their silver eyes. "Look at them," Valora whispered, holding his hand openly now. "They're ready for change." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Are you ready? Once we broadcast this, there's no going back." Valora touched the crystal that held the truth about her people's suffering. "For 300 years, we haven't lived. We've just existed. It's time to teach our people how to live again." They entered the broadcast center together, ready to change their world forever. Behind them, Marcus could hear something he never thought he'd hear on an Azurian ship: the sound of people cheering with pure, unrestrained joy. 2 months had passed since the broadcast that changed Azurian society forever. Marcus stood by a large window in the ship's main hall, watching as Azurian children played together, laughing and showing emotions that would have been forbidden just weeks ago. Still amazed by the changes, Valora asked, joining him at the window. She wasn't wearing her formal royal dress anymore, instead choosing simpler clothes that matched her more relaxed personality. Every day, Marcus smiled. "Yesterday, I saw 2 elder council members hugging. Actually hugging." The ship had become a completely different place. After broadcasting the truth about the genetic treatments and their harmful effects, along with the High Matriarch's research showing the importance of emotions, most Azurians had chosen to embrace change. The medical bay doors opened, and Marcus watched as another group of Azurians emerged, looking dazed but happy. These were the ones who had chosen to have their emotional suppression treatments reversed. "How many now?" he asked. "Over 80% of our people have chosen to restore their emotions," Valora replied proudly. "The rest are waiting to see long-term results, but they're not fighting against it anymore." The High Matriarch appeared behind them, looking healthier than ever. The latest reports from other Azurian colonies are equally promising. They're all requesting the restoration process. Marcus turned to face her. "And the birth rates?" "Already improving," she smiled, something that still surprised Marcus every time he saw it. "The first natural Azurian birth in 300 years happened this morning. Both mother and child are healthy." Valora grabbed Marcus's hand excitedly. "Really? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I wanted to tell you both together," the matriarch said. "After all, you two started this revolution." They walked together through the ship's corridors, seeing more signs of change everywhere. Males walked freely among females now, no longer confined to separate facilities. Young Azurians were learning to dance, create art, and make music. Even the ship's architecture had changed, with residents adding colorful decorations to the once stark walls. They reached the same chamber where Marcus had first been given his choice between marriage or death. It looked very different now, filled with flowers from Earth and crystal formations from the Azurian homeworld. "It's time for another choice," the High Matriarch announced. "But this time, it's a real choice, not a forced one." She turned to face both of them. "Valora, Marcus, your arranged marriage was meant to be political. But everyone can see what has grown between you is real. So I ask you both now, freely, do you choose to stay together?" Marcus looked at Valora, remembering everything they'd been through. He remembered her defending him against the council, fighting beside him, learning to feel and love despite everything she'd been taught. Valora's silver eyes met his, filled with tears of joy, something that would have been impossible months ago. "I choose you," she said simply, "not because of politics or duty, but because you taught me how to feel, how to live." "I choose you too," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You're the bravest person I've ever known. You risked everything to save your people." The High Matriarch raised her hands. "Then let this be the first true marriage of the new Azurian age, one based on love, not genetic calculations." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, another human tradition the Azurians had come to appreciate. Cheers erupted from the gathered crowd. Marcus saw humans from his research vessel among them, recently arrived to help establish diplomatic relations. "What happens now?" he asked Valora softly. She squeezed his hand, smiling. "Now we build something new. Not just human, not just Azurian, but something better. Together. Around them, their people, both human and Azurian, celebrated not just a marriage, but the beginning of a new era. An era where emotions weren't seen as weakness, but as the source of true strength. The choice that had once seemed like a death sentence had become a gift, not just for Marcus and Valora, but for an entire civilization learning to feel again.